Hello, good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday. Welcome back to another episode of Unsubscribe. My name is Tanya. Whether you know me, you're going to get to know me in this episode. I'm so happy to be joining you. Looking forward to this episode. I'm going to hold off saying the name, but you guys probably know it by now, but I'm going to be cheeky anyway. Anyway, welcome back. I'm so happy to be presenting with you guys, and I hope you guys have had a good week. It's a bit rainy. If you're in England, it's a bit rainy, but we're here and we're gonna have a really good session. Just a quick reminder, guys, you can find us, and I hope I remember where we are to be found. Anyway, we can be found at Instagram and Facebook, and our name is unsubscribe_Bright City Church. So find us there. Our social media manager, Kanel, shout out, has been doing such a phenomenal job. And you can also catch up with different members of the team as well. Again, I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are blessed. If you've had a tough week, I hope that this session can really encourage you. And if you're having a good week, it can even encourage you even more. Listen, someone told me that maybe one of you guys out there have not watched the video from last week. We are going to do you a favor and actually show you a recap. So, media team, let's play the video.
So I have the amazing Jade and the beautiful Kanel with me. What have you been up to?
Just working, but not really working.
I hope your work isn't watching.
Well, if you are, sorry.
But the discussion for this week is called Build Up. What does that mean? Charlotte, what's your talk about? What's this chat about? For me, building up is associated with building up others and people that have imparted, invested into me over a period of time.
The behaviours.
Exactly.
More than just trying to say something, be like, right, if I'm imparting in your life, I'm your mentor, this is going to be official, but a lot of time it's just through, I think you said it, through relationship and through our behaviour and the way we just are as people.
Yeah. You never underestimate a person just because of their age.
Yeah. There's so much input that you can have from various different people in your lives. If you're shutting yourself off from the people around you, you're missing out on opportunities to grow as a person, spiritually and in general as well, in development.
And I've had some amazing mentors there, some people that really taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet in my faith.
It's very true. It's not to say everyone is so much better than me, I'm rubbish, I'm a nothing person, but it's more to be always lift up everyone else.
So definitely in my experience, the people that I spent time with in church and they taught me how to do things and with a level of excellence, all of those kinds of things are then transferable into the workplace and into just daily life as well.
When I found out about what this topic was going to be about, build up, the thing that dropped into my spirit was aspire to inspire.
Well, I can make a difference by my speech, my conduct, the way I love, the way I live my faith, the way I keep my purity, all of these things.
Be that inspiration, be that influence, be impactful, impart wisdom and knowledge and understanding into the lives of others. What a session. Just watching that back gave me goosebumps. I mean, oh, by the way, guys, I'm joined with Joel. I was so caught up in that episode. But yes, Joel, welcome back. How does it feel? When were you last on?
I think 2 weeks back.
2 weeks back.
2 weeks back, yeah.
What
I was behind the scenes last week, but on camera a couple of weeks back.
And that was the episode where we were talking about
being in the world,
but not
of
of
the
it.
world.
I remember.
I remember it better now than the episode. I think I forgot.
No, there's been so much. But do you know what? I was just thinking like how great that episode was with Charlotte. I'm trying to not look at her because she's right there.
Oh, look, Charlotte, it was a great episode.
But it was a really good episode. And I was
Very
just
much
like,
so.
yeah, it's so important for us to build each other up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's such a good message. And I think, do you know what? The main bit that I really took away from that is just that we always influence people even when we don't realise it. Like I remember the story Jade was saying to Canel about like when they came for dinner and how that as a blessing for them. And like Canel said, we wouldn't have known that at the time.
Yeah. Those not random, but those little sort of things you don't think.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's just a good reminder, isn't it? Like we're always available.
We
to
are
be a
all
blessing.
influencers, as Charlotte
Amen.
said, which is, you know, and that's, to be honest, like in all seriousness, like it makes me realize how important the way we live our life, how we, you know, not in a pressure kind of way, but just to set a good example to people, just because there will be someone who's watching you, looking up to you, you know, whether you know it or not. So I think it's just a very, very good reminder, you know. But yeah, how are you doing? How's your week been?
I'm blessed. It's been all right. 2020 for me has been like working from home a lot. So I've been sort of working at home, working out, trying to make sure I don't get too out of shape and stuff. But
you're really on it with that cool. On Instagram.
I'm trying.
No, but that's good. No, and myself included, like 2020's been sort of reshuffling everything, like trying to figure out how to do life again. I don't know if you get that impression.
I hear you.
You know what I mean? And to be honest, I think you guys at home might feel the same way. Like 2020's just been one of those ones. But in all things, we give thanks. And actually, funny enough, we're talking about 2020. That will be our topic of discussion. And to be specific, my title is 2020, hashtag 2020 uncancelled. The reason why I chose that title, if you're kind of savvy with the social media, that's sort of what people have been saying, like, 2020 is cancelled or...
That's where every year's been cancelled since like 2014, hasn't it?
Every year has been cancelled. Literally. And it's like, everyone keeps just saying, this year's like, it's over. Like, let's just wait for 2021 to start. And I'm like, no, why should we give away a whole year? You know, it just, to me, it doesn't make any sense.
Come on. Preach.
I'm gonna be preaching. I'm checking. No, but to be fair, like, my one take-home message, and I know we're only at the beginning, is do not count yourself out. Do not say this is not your year. It can be your year. This year, it will be your year, okay? I've gone all African then. Anyway, I think we have a video from our lovely Miss Jade, who's going to be sharing a testimony of how she found 2020. I think you're going to be encouraged. Take a watch, guys.
Hi guys, it's Jade. So, 2020, what a year. And this topic is hashtag 2020 uncancelled. And absolutely uncancelled. There's still another 3 months left of the year. We're in the final quarter and everything can change. Everything can be amazing. It could be, who knows what happens. But for me personally, my testimony, I'm going to talk you through my year and talk to you about how God's been so faithful and so gracious in my life and in my family's life. So January 2020 is the month that I got married. We flew out to Jamaica and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Whilst we were out there, and this should have been a telltale sign that it was going to be the wildest year ever, it was cold. It was cold in Jamaica. I mean, we're talking just about 20 degrees for a few of the days, constantly. The first 5 days of being there, it rained and rained and rained, poured like I've never seen it pour in Jamaica before in January. The day of the wedding, there was a little bit of rain as well. Not just a little bit, it showered down, but we're calling them showers of blessings. And the next day after that was bright blue skies and sun shining. But you know what? The whole experience was amazing. And even more telltale sign that 2020 was going to be the wildest of wild years is whilst we were out there in Jamaica, we experienced a 7.7 earthquake. And I mean, nothing happened. No buildings fell down. No one was injured. It was just amazing. Like, wow. So we were there thinking, oh my gosh, what craziness, what has February got in store for us? And I think I even put that on one of my statuses, maybe on Facebook or something like that, like February 2020, what have you got for me? And what that had for me was my son turning 10. He had an amazing birthday and fun time, but then that was the last time that we were able to gather together in a group before lockdown. And so that was the end of February, his birthday was, and we progressed very quickly into March. And March was the wildest year for me personally, wildest month for me personally, because that was the month that I got really, really sick. So I one moment I was okay, the next thing I know, shortly after they closed the schools down, is that I was in hospital and I had bilateral pneumonia. Now, I didn't have COVID. I was tested twice for it, and both of them, those times, were negative tests. But I came back stronger, better than before. I mean, I was really unwell. I had some anticoagulant injections, and I just praise God because there were so many people praying for me. Thank you to all of my old church family and friends and my new church family and friends at Bright City for praying, my family who were there to look after me. So during that time of me being off sick, all the schools are closed down, and now I'm a mum, and that was the wildest few months coming ever, because then I had to turn into mum, teacher, and employee. It was just so crazy. I had started having to do like long division again, and thank God for YouTube. I'm telling you, YouTube was just my saving grace right there, because maths, everything else, thumbs up. Maths, no way. But then, you know, the summer holidays came. But actually, if I rewind a little bit, I will then just say that in the time of me being unwell, my husband, he had to take off quite a lot of time from work, and he to help nurse me back to good health, and he really stood strong for me with my mum. But unfortunately, his workplace didn't really value the whole family dynamic and issue, and they really just fired him in the time where we needed it the most. And so from, let's say, I think it was June through to July, he was jobless. My husband didn't have a job, and so we were there, and my wage, thank God, it stretched, but it got us, you know, we were into a bit of a pickle, and we were just on one wage. And again, we thank God that he was so merciful to us and provided for our every need. And he, not long after kind of searching and praying and finding the right job, and thank you again to all those who prayed that he would be able to find the right job, he got one and was in that for a few months. And then now that's taken us into like something July, and by this time we're fully into the summer holidays. So summer holidays, and I was still working, so I'd gone back to work after being unwell, and I'd taken a few days off here and there to make sure that I had a really good time with Micah. And I just kept on seeing the blessings of God. I kept seeing how faithful he was, and every single time I got on my knees and I knelt before him, he would come up and he would reassure me and reassure my family that he's got us and he's looking after us, and he's just so merciful towards us. So all glory to be to God for that. Now, kind of in that time, I transitioned from my old church and I've joined Bright City, and here we are starting to have conversations about Unsubscribe. And again, here I am on camera speaking to you about my testimony of 2020. Now, not in April, August, we're there, August, Eddie loses his job again. And we were like, what? But it was only 2 days this time he was out of work, and he was able to start again in something new. And so again, I'm so grateful for the provision that God has made, and the gumption to go out and pursue something new and pursue something greater than before. And that's something that really has taught me about life in general. 2020 is that we need to be pursuing things that are greater than before. So wherever we're in, and we might not be feeling that we are completely happy, it's okay to pursue the greater, because actually, as long as in accordance to God's will, why not? Why won't he provide that for us, provide that something greater? And here we are, October. We're in October, and again, like I said, it's the last quarter
of the year, and we can do so much as long as we are putting our entire faith in Jesus and living the lifestyle and having those conversations with God about what it is that he wants for us and where he wants us to be, and following Jesus and following his will for us, then why can't things change? If it's been a rubbish year, why can't it get better? Have a think about that. So that's my very quick testimony. 2020, hashtag 2020 uncancelled.
Won't he do it? I love Jay's testimony.
What a testimony.
Right? I felt so encouraged, literally, watching that back.
So good. And just a quick little side note, we were talking like behind the scenes, is when Jade was sending me the video to edit, I was thinking, I saw 7 minutes and I thought, you know what, all right, let me just cut this up. There'll probably be some pauses.
Yeah.
What a speaker.
She is
7
phenomenal.
minutes of pure
motivational
testimony.
speaker, no slurring, no nothing. Jade, we love ya.
Round of applause for Jade. Round of applause for Jade.
Even the tech
studio
team
loves you. I'm sure the comments love you. Drop a comment. Hashtag we love Jade.
We love Jade. No, honestly, like even what you were sharing about, you know, how we shouldn't discount this year and how God turned your life around, Jade's life around, is so inspirational. I mean, losing your job, like Eddie, your husband losing his job like twice, or how many times? I lost count. Listening back, and I thought that's just a lot to deal with. But for you, Jade, to be standing there saying God is faithful and telling us not to sort of, you were even saying like, go for more. Like you were even saying like, don't just believe for small, go even greater. And I thought, I like that faith. That's the kind of thing we like, isn't it, Joe? So.
Amen. And an earthquake at your wedding.
What?
An earthquake at your wedding. I don't know how
you
many
can't
of us
even
can
make
say
that stuff up. But I know they say when it rains, it's like a shower of blessings type of thing. I don't know what they'll say when it's an earthquake. But to be honest, Jade, your life is a testimony of his goodness. And I'm sure even guys watching, you've probably got your own sort of testimonies of what God has done in 2020. Feel free to drop that in the comment section.
Yeah, please do.
It'll definitely encourage us, isn't it? Yeah?
100%.
Yeah, 100%. Well, there's so much to talk about today, guys. And I don't know if I said it yet, we have a special guest coming on in a few minutes.
I'm looking forward to that.
Brace yourself. She is a phenomenal woman, but I'll probably give a proper introduction when the time comes. But actually, before we talk about that next section, I wanted to talk about a chap in the Bible. It's so formal, isn't it? There's a gentleman in the Bible by the name of Joseph that I wish to discuss. And the truth is, I was saying to Joel and the guys, like, look, there are so many people in the Bible that have experienced a difficult situation, a situation which should have cancelled them. And Joseph is one of many. And I thought, you know, let's talk about how God has, even in his word, proven how he can change people's lives around in such a dramatic way. So, Joel, what can you, Bible quiz now, Bible trivia, in 5... Hope you're reading your Bible. I'm joking. No pressure, and I can fill in. But this guy, I don't even know what you're talking about. You're a Bible scholar. This guy was preaching sermons and everything. What can you tell us about the story of Joseph? Tell us a brief synopsis.
Wow,
Joseph.
What a chap Joseph was. No, I guess a lot of people watching probably know, but if you don't, to summarize, I will say it's one of my favorite stories from the Bible of a character that just had a very, I would say unique life, but just very mad and interesting.
Hard, isn't it? It's like a tough life.
100%.
Yeah.
He was one of many brothers.
I lost count. I don't even know.
And this is going to be like a real quick synopsis, but he basically gets betrayed by his brothers. His brothers are jealous of him.
Yep.
He is the favorite of his father.
Yeah.
His brothers betray him, sell him into slavery, and sort of lead the father to believe that he's dead.
Yeah.
So the
they
whole
tear his robe.
Yeah. So the family's thinking he's dead. He's been sold into slavery, and along the way, he eventually gets purchased by an Egyptian.
Yep.
And he ends up in the house there, the wife of the person that bought him keeps trying it on with him and making moves. He keeps rejecting it. And after sort of one of his rejections, he runs out of the house. And she basically says, "Oh, he raped me. He tried to rape me." So he gets thrown in prison.
In prison.
Then
From slavery to prison.
So it's already going crazy. And something else that I had actually forgotten until I sort of reread is that his mother. So his mother was his mother, and he's got one other brother, Benjamin, and the mum died. Rachel died giving birth to Benjamin. So he's already had his mum die. He's been betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, ends up in prison. Then in prison, there are sort of two people that come in, and Joseph interprets
the dream.
some dreams for them. Sort of says, for one of them, it's going to be well for you. For the other, you're going to die. You know?
Yeah,
one
that's
of those
what it was.
brutal interpretations. But to the one that survives, he's getting released, and he says, "Look, just remember me. Try and put a good word in for me." That guy forgets him after all of the things that Joseph's done for him until 2 years later.
2 years though.
Long time to be sitting there thinking, "Where's my friend? Is he going to riot?" Or
well, that's another thing.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And eventually he gets remembered by this guy because the Pharaoh at the time...
He has the dreams.
Exactly, and kind of wants it interpreted. Says, actually, I've just remembered after 2 years' time my friend who interpreted my dreams. He can do it for you. And he basically then interprets the Pharaoh's dreams, and the Pharaoh sort of gives him more authority, doesn't he?
Elevates him. Like, basically, next to Pharaoh, that he's like, yeah, you're right, yeah.
And it's just, you sort of see then how Joseph sort of keeps going from strength to strength and ends up in a position of real power. I think he's like almost just one underneath the Pharaoh across all of Egypt. And obviously, if you know, at the time, Egypt was a huge empire. That was
very
to be in charge of anything is a lot, but to be in charge of an empire like that,
that's power
is huge.
Right there.
And he sort of then, long story short, can use his position to be a blessing not just for the Egyptians but for his own people, for his family, for people from all around. For example, there's a famine and Egypt,
massive famine,
sort of through, because of Joseph, is still sort of blessed, and he can sort of use that to help people. So it's a really amazing story, and you really see the two sides of life, like the highs and the lows in this one man.
And that the reason why I chose, like, thank you so much for that, Joel, by the way. That was a really good synopsis.
He scores out of 10.
He scored an 8 out of 10. Checking 10 out of 10. Way well done, Joel. No, but what I wanted to say was, you know, it's such a, like you said, it's a high and low type of story. And if we were to sort of join Joseph at the point where maybe he was in prison, maybe he was in slavery, we could be like, "Rah, Joe, life is tough for you. Peak for you. I'm so sorry. Like, God could never use you." I mean, I wouldn't say that, but we know we would be tempted. I would be.
I'll probably encourage you, but you'd be thinking it.
I would be thinking, dude, like, it's done. What did you do? Like, did you do something? Like, what? You know what I mean? And, you know, it's tempting. Even, that's one thing to note, guys. Be very careful how you judge someone for where they currently are. You don't know where God can take that person. They could be, you know, in one position, but God can take them to another position. So we should be very careful in terms of how we, you know, say, I don't know, how we look at people's situations and our own. Do you know what I mean?
Very true.
There's so much we can say from the story of Joseph, but one thing I wanted to say about it is, at the beginning, which I love the story of Joseph for that, is he's a dreamer. He has a vision. And maybe at the beginning of the year, you had a vision. You know, we call them, what do you call them? New Year's revolutions.
Oh, resolutions.
Resolutions, that's the word.
There might be some people doing some New Year's revolutions soon.
Did I say revolution?
Yeah.
New Year's resolution, where, you know, you say, okay, in 2020, I want to do this, I want to do that. And perhaps Joseph was in a similar situation. And the thing is, if you're familiar with this story, basically he has a dream whereby, you know, the sun and the moon and all these hay bales are bowing down to him. And God gave him the gift of interpretation. So he understands that basically he's going to be in a position of authority. He didn't know, okay, that he had to go through all of that to get to that position of authority. And
that's a key point, because I think a lot of times when we read the Bible, we see it from beginning to end. Or we already know how it ends up, and you forget. They were humans like us. He didn't know at the time
exactly
what his end was going to be.
And I like doing that. I like to read the Bible in that lens, like really not humanizing it, but really putting it in a practical sense, like trying to put myself in that position. And it brings the Bible to life in a way that, you know, is so remarkable. And, you know, we can think like, going back to the story of Joseph, how, you know, he had a hope and a dream, and the thing is, it seemed like his brothers took away that hope, took away that dream when they sold him into slavery. There's a picture where, you know, the tearing of his robe, if you're familiar with the story, basically his dad gifted him this beautiful robe. And, you know, in the Bible, the robe can signify so many things, identity, so many things, man, whatever. I'm not going to go into it, but it's a really sort of significant thing that he was given. He gets that taken off of him, ripped, and sold into slavery. And even just looking at that sort of instance, you can see how you can start feeling like, well, I had this dream, but all of these things are happening and I can't, you know, put it together. Like, what's happening? And things keep getting from bad to worse. He gets into slavery, then he gets into prison, then someone forgets him in prison. And it's like, what, Lord, like, if I was Joseph, I'd be like, Lord, what is really happening here? But you know what? Well, we don't know what he was saying to the Lord, but for the fact that he was still and the thing is about Joseph's story is that he kept getting promoted. So you can tell how even wherever he was, he made the most of his situation. Do you know what I mean? Like in the house of Potiphar, he got promoted and he was like looking after the whole household. Then that obviously went wrong. Then he was in prison. But even the prison guards put him in a position over, like, in authority over all the prisoners. So you can tell, like, Joseph was still faithful where he was at. And that's perhaps even something to learn about, you know.
I think that's a key thing, because something I really take from that story is the importance of perspective, no matter what your situation is. Because, like I say, he seems to, from what we read, lead a good life. Be the right person, do the right things. And then every time he's in a crazy situation, he still seems to make the best of it.
Exactly, yeah.
And it results in something potentially worse happening. So I think number one, it kind of shows me that it's a good reminder not to live this sort of calmer mindset, because I still think even as Christians we can fall into that way of thinking, can't we? As in, but God, I did X, Y, Z, so surely my situation should be better than it was before I did it faithfully. And this is a good reminder that's not always the way things work, but I think it links to the point of perspective, because how you view in your situation, because he could have had a very different sort of perspective, and like you said, thought, well, this is all over for me. I had these dreams, can't be true, I'm in jail, I was falsely accused of rape, my own family betrayed me, my whole life has been a disaster since day one, because my mother died giving birth to my brother, all these kind of crazy things.
And we could have been like, he's justified, like, yeah, of course, I get it, you know what I mean? So,
and I think that's just a big, I think in life there's always going to be ups and downs for all of us, even the people out there that you think have it all made and given to them on a silver platter. I guarantee you there's still a lot of tragedy and crazy things that have happened or will happen in their lives. But what's your perspective?
Exactly.
How are you going to choose to view that? Really?
I like that. And actually what you were saying is getting me thinking about how, one thing about perspective, and I'll come back to that point, but do not abandon your gift. Do not abandon the word that God spoke to you. The thing was that what got him out of the prison, the fact that he was able to interpret dreams. Imagine if along the way he just said, you know what, this thing keeps getting me into trouble. I'm not going to pursue it. And I would get, again, this is all something I would do. Maybe you watching can be like, yeah, this dream I keep having, it just doesn't make sense and and I'm gonna forget about it.
Or no one appreciates it. The one it helped in prison forgot about it.
But that shouldn't be what determines how you steward the gift. Just do it anyway. Okay? Just have faith anyway. You don't know what God's gonna do around the corner, but you have to be faithful with what you have. You know, and going back to what you said about perspective. Look, we don't get to know what Joseph was thinking, but we can, from what we're discussing, the way he stewarded himself, where he was at, we can tell that he had a moderately to good perspective over his situation. And that's so important. And I will say this, maybe this might embarrass you, Joel and Canel, but I have to say it because it really spoke to me. When I was at Joel and Canel's house, I came across this book. And I don't know if you know what I'm going to say.
I know you're going to say, yeah.
There is this book of blessing that they write. Is that what you call it?
The Book of Blessings,
The Book of Blessings. Do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah, sure. So that's a funny point. So basically, how it all started was there was been some crazy years for me and my wife, but God thankfully has always been there for us and taken us through it. And I remember speaking to her one day and saying, do you know what, it's mad what God has done for us. If I look back on my life individually, same for her. And I was thinking, I always rely on just my memories of it.
Wow.
But I was thinking, God's done so much for me, and I'm always like quick to pray if I sort of need God or whatever. But I want to be quick to sort of remember what he's done. So I bought this big book.
And it is. It's like a A3, massive one. Yeah,
it's a big one. And just every time something happens, small or big, I just try and write that down. Same for Canal.
Yeah. And they filled it up. They filled, like, I think you were like, what, number of pages.
Yeah, it's getting there for sure.
Incredible. Me, myself, just reading that book, I was encouraged. Seeing all the breakthroughs that you guys have had. And I'm saying this to the point of perspective. Sometimes, like you have to remind yourself of the goodness of God to change your perspective, because life may not remind you, the situation around you may not remind you, maybe your friends may not remind you, but if you write it down and just have a reference, you can go, of course, the word of God, you've got that as well, but if you have your own experiences, your own testimonies that you can go back to and be like, yes, I'm facing this difficult situation, but God last year did this thing for me. But God 2 years ago did this thing for me. You have an anchor, you have a reference point to say, nah, I'm going to pin my faith on what God did. Because if he did it then, I'm still the same person. He's still the same God. So why can't he do something?
So
do you know what I mean?
And I just think it's so helpful to practically do things to remind you of God. Like even in the Bible, you see, it might sort of get lost in translation, but there's so many times the Israelites, when God would bless them or something happened, they would name the hill after something or the
they'll
town.
Build something or they'll do
And when we read it in English, maybe the translation gets lost because we just read it as a name. But to them, that name, it meant something. It would be like you were blessed in your first house, so you always call your house, I don't know, the place we were blessed. And then every time you're mentioning it, it's reminding you, oh yeah, we were blessed.
It's incredible, isn't it?
And I think it's key, however you choose to do it, like whether you write it down in a book or. But what I would say is don't just rely on storing it up in your mind. There's a lot to be said for practically writing down. Because when life is hard, your mind's going to be full of negative thoughts. It's not going to have room for these good memories. And that's where you need to get something practical. And like you said, be reminded of this is what God's done. And it can also serve as an encouragement for other people.
For other people.
Like
me just reading their book and reading their testimony encouraged me. So, challenge, guys. Get a jar. An empty jar, a jar of pickle, like this, right? Get a piece of paper, and anytime God does something small or big, write it down. Obviously, it's good to do this at the beginning of the year, but we're going to do it now. Write it down, and maybe next year, October, go back to that jar. Or even, let's say, at the end of this year, go back to that jar, and you will be encouraged as you read the faithfulness of God in your life. So that is my challenge to you. Yeah? I think that's a good one. Guys, it's all bless you. I mean, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it, and we're going to see. And, you know, the thing about testimony, the thing about, you know, remembering the faithfulness of God, it's like you get faith to think, oh, but that God can do it again. And it just increases and increases and increases. We can talk a lot about this, can't we? But someone's knocking on our door, so we have to open. Our friend Nikita would like to join us in the conversation. Nikita, what can I say about this girl right here? There is many things to say. She's a dear friend of mine. She is a graduate. She is a PhD student in counseling psychology. She is phenomenal. She's funny. And she's a tea enthusiast. But she's a really cool girl. So why don't you guys join me as we welcome Nikita. Woo woo, Nikki! Look at you, you've dolled up. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
Welcome to Unsubscribe. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? You think I'm funny?
Yeah, don't. Because she'll keep reminding me I said that. No, I don't think you're funny. I'm joking. Nikki, welcome to Unsubscribe. Oh,
Hi,
yes,
Nikita.
I was going to say, this is Joel, but you know him already, right?
Yeah.
We've met before, yeah.
Yes. Well,
Yeah,
welcome
It
again.
would have been awkward if we said different answers.
I
there,
know. If one remembered and the other one didn't. Imagine. Well, Nikki, welcome to Unsubscribe. This is a platform for people like you and I and anyone who's watching. It's literally a place where we can sort of bounce back ideas. I don't know if you were hearing the conversation we were having before about Joseph, but this is sort of it, isn't it? Like, we've been going since September.
Yeah, 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Today.
4 weeks, and you are our first guest. How do you
Oh,
feel?
wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is a real honor, isn't it?
It is.
Well, why don't you tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself so that they can get to know you a bit better.
Okay, so my name is Nikita. I am a counsellor as well as a trainee counselling psychologist. I'm in my final year of study. I've been studying all my life. I'm tired.
You've not stopped being a student.
I need to. I really need to. This year I launched my own therapy practice called Therapy-ish. So I do that. I also have a podcast. I think I enjoy being busy, although I don't, but I think I do because I'm always busy. Tanya mentioned I love tea. I love food. Yeah, I love old movies as well.
And where are you from exactly? What region of the world are you from?
I'm from Ghana.
Way. All the Ghanaians, way. Well, Nikki, I don't know if you were hearing the conversation. We're talking about sort of 2020. How has it been for you, just briefly?
2020, bittersweet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been bittersweet. I think the reason I use that word is because it hasn't been personally bitter, but it's been bitter in that it's been a tough year for everyone. It's been difficult for everyone. We've seen people go through a lot. I think the world has just completely shifted this year. And I remember, like, you know, New Year, everyone was doing, you know, 2020 vision and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
It hasn't looked like what people expected at all. But at the same time, this year for me, I've definitely seen God's faithfulness. I've seen, like, in the midst of hardship, God push through and do things that I never expected. So I'm grateful.
Well, before we get into that, I think, because we're going to talk more about your 2020, I think it would be helpful for us to get an understanding of where you're coming from, sort of leading up to 2020. And as you said, you've been a student all your life. You know, tell us, why don't you walk us through your journey up until 2020 and just let the folks know about, and bearing in mind, you know, our theme and stuff.
Okay, cool. My life. So I got saved when I was 16. I got saved when I was 16. And for me, it's really interesting kind of reflecting on my journey, actually, because it was very much around identity. I think at the point that I got saved, it was because I realized, or God revealed to me, that I wasn't really on the path to being the person that He created me to be. I was on a completely different path. And so, like, I would never get there going down the way that I was. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, you have to help me. And that was my moment of salvation. Wow. Since then, it's been a really interesting journey, a journey of self-discovery, a journey of, just getting to know God and kind of walking out my purpose, really. It's been amazing. There have been challenges, but it's been really cool. I think I've always been someone who knew, or for a long time I've known what I've wanted to do. I first got interested in mental health when I was about 10. And then I've just been kind of going down that way. So it was quite a natural path for me. But I'm just really grateful. I feel like I'm currently in a season where I'm finally getting to do everything that I've always wanted to do, which is a really, really amazing and really fulfilling feeling.
Was there something, like, in particular around 10 that made you know that that's what I want to get into, or it's just something that happened?
So when I was 10, this is a side note, I love writing. I love
she does
creative writing. And so when I was about 10, I watched a documentary. I remember it was on Channel 4, and it was to do with mental health, someone who had dissociative personality disorder. And I was just so intrigued, and I remember like actually writing a story about it afterwards and just being like, oh my gosh, I want to know more. Those were the days slightly before Google, so the information was just not accessible then. So all I could do was kind of use my imagination and see where it got me. And then when I was 13, I kind of had an experience, schooling and just teenage life and a lot of things, where I felt really alone. And in that moment, I actually remember saying to myself, like, I don't want anyone to ever experience this and feel alone. And so that's when it started to shift, even though it was still like kind of within mental health, that's when it started to shift towards counselling. Yeah, that's what happened.
By the way, guys, we're going to have a Q&A session towards the end. So if you have questions, feel free to post them. Do you reckon now?
Yeah, even from now, if you could like put them in the comments, and then we'll try and pick some up.
Yeah, pick some up for Nikki to answer. You said something so interesting, Nikki, about how only until now I'm able to do what I want to do with respect to your, mental health and all that you're pursuing. So could you sort of walk us through the challenges that you've experienced in terms of getting to where you are now?
So on the one hand, you're kind of sold this dream that like go to uni, do like what you want to do, and then you'll fall out of uni and you'll fall into the perfect job, and one day you bump into the perfect man, and then like Bob's your uncle kind of thing. But life is very different for a lot of people, and I think it's just life, and it's just growing up, kind of realizing that. And this is it for me, actually, realizing that I have a plan A, I have a plan B, I have a plan C, and things may not necessarily go plan A or plan B or plan C, but regardless, like my life is in God's hands and we're going to get there. We're going to get to the destination. So I think that was one of the first challenges, but also I think along the journey has been a lot of challenges to do with me, again, my identity, to do with kind of things like my self-confidence. So the course that I'm on, the counselling psychology doctorate, you start, and then literally as soon as you start, you get put onto placement. So you literally start counselling people the same month that you start the course, and you're like, oh my gosh, okay. And so there's something about being, in a room with a client, they close the door and they're like, hi, these are my problems, help me. And you're just like, there's something about that. That really challenges who you are fundamentally, and challenges, okay, why are you really here? And so, that has been very interesting. And also things like the little personality things, like I used to hate confrontation. It's still not like my favorite thing, but within counseling, you find that actually in order to help your client, in order to help the person in front of you, there has to be like a bit of a giving of yourself. If I dislike confrontation and you dislike confrontation, I'm trying to help you, then we'll both just skirt around the issue and no one gets help. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, I have a question. I always have so many questions to ask you, Nikki. And it was more so to do with how you keep saying this word about identity. And I think that's actually quite an interesting word. And how has your identity factored in terms of your purpose, if that makes sense? How has your identity encouraged you towards your purpose, or possibly your, you know what I mean, like how your misconception of your identity affected your purpose? Do you know what I mean? How has both settings, because you explained how before you knew Christ, your identity was one way, and after your identity was another way. And you keep mentioning how your identity is helping you as you walk out your purpose. So maybe you could unpack that a little? Yeah, okay.
So growing up, I kind of let myself become very shy. I wasn't shy as a child, no one really is, but I let myself become very shy and very reserved and kind of like withdrawn. And I also, I guess within that, and I talk about this a lot, like on my podcast, there were some things that I said to myself in terms of, how I deserve to be, like, like when you, sometimes when people talk about when they're depressed, they have a lot of kind of self-deprecating thoughts, or even when people are shy, they think like, oh, no one wants to hear my voice, or oh, no one cares, or no one needs to hear my opinion and stuff like that. And I think there had been a lot of that kind of self-talk in my mind as well. And so getting saved was one thing, because God starts to kind of speak to you about who you really are, and you get surrounded by church family, and, you know, you read the word and you're like, okay, yeah, this is who I am. Okay, now enter my brain kind of thing. But I think there's another level in terms of, for me, in terms of walking out in purpose, particularly this year, stepping out and doing things that I've kind of felt that I've always wanted to do. Like, for example, launching my therapy practice, I've had to come face to face with everything that I hesitated about with myself, and everything that I talked down with myself, and deal with it. And actually, I think that when you're saved, there comes a point, I think initially there's a point where you're like, okay, I'm learning. And then there's a point where you're like, actually, I know it now. So I know better. I now have to decide to believe it. Like, I have to make a conscious choice to believe it. And so for me, it was like, okay, I know that there's nothing wrong with my voice, for example, even though I've told myself that no one wants to hear my voice. I know there's nothing wrong with my voice, but in order for me to do purpose, in order for me to put myself out there and help other people, because ultimately that's what this whole walk is about, right? I'm going to have to put my voice out there. Not only so, I'm going to have to put my voice on a podcast. I'm going to have to listen to myself speaking, edit it, record it. Like, do you know what I mean? It caused me to come face to face with like every insecurity. And there was a moment where I was like, God, like I think I really grieved, like not, I grieved the things that I'd held on to as comfort, because that's what it becomes after a certain period of time of knowing God and kind of developing in God. You know the truth, but you're still holding on to the lies because they're what you've always known. So I had this real kind of tantrum moment with God. And then afterwards I was like, okay, let's do this.
I'm done.
What advice would you give to anyone that would maybe think they're at that point of thinking, well, I know what I need to know now, I just need to step out and try and live it? What sort of advice or tips would you give to someone who's at that stage?
A few things. One, it starts with this, being real with yourself, being very real with yourself. What is it that stands in your way? What is it in your own thinking? What is it that you know, and what do you actually believe? Because that I always say this, even to my clients, there's a difference between head knowledge and like your beliefs, and what you will act out is actually what you believe. And so first of all, just being frank with yourself, because people will say, oh, I know that, like you try and give people advice. Sometimes they're like, I know you know, but what do you actually believe? Because that's what you'll be acting out. And I feel like it's very important to first be frank with yourself and be practical about it. Write it down and like sit down with yourself and think, okay, because first of all, you have to acknowledge, you have to count the cost, right? I feel like walking out in purpose is very expensive. I always tell God, it's the most expensive thing you've ever had me do. And I don't think people talk about this enough. And then after that, I would say to talk through it, to pray through it, and to talk to someone about it, whether that's a close friend, a trusted friend, a family member, a pastor, even a therapist, to start to, externalize these things, not from a place of necessarily like, I want advice, because usually these are things that you know, but even to like talk through it and to hash it out, because it is a process. I feel it's a grieving process. It's a process of deciding to let go, and deciding to embrace what God really says about you. Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. And look, it's possible that someone on here may not be familiar with this word we keep throwing around, purpose. What is purpose to you? You're looking at me. What does purpose mean to you? And we're not asking for a sermon, but like like a synopsis. I like that word, synopsis of what purpose is.
Purpose is what you were made to do. It's literally what you were put on this earth to do. I think that purpose evolves over time. And there might be different kind of missions you have within one purpose, but it's literally like, usually it has an overarching theme, and it's literally what God has put you here to do. yeah, that's what I'd say.
I like the way you say evolve as well,
Mm-hmm,
because I think that's where I see a lot of people slip up.
Yeah.
Is you might have that sort of revelation moment where
Yeah.
you think that's my purpose,
Yeah.
and then maybe like God is steering you in a certain
Yeah.
direction, and that was a part of the journey,
Yeah.
like a mission, like you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
And you're just trying to cling to no, that's my
That's my purpose.
that's my
That's
purpose.
It.
I can't let go, and
Yeah.
you can end up being
Yeah.
sort of trapped.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I guess that can actually make you feel low then,
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
think I'm not progressing,
Yeah.
I'm not getting the breakthroughs,
Yeah.
it's not. But
Yeah.
it might just be you're
being moved
not
on.
evolving
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
way
yeah.
that you're meant to evolve.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
saying that, Nikki, what was I doing at uni in terms of when I first started? What was that? What was the name of that group we started?
Ariella.
Ariella. So we started a women's group, a young girls group on campus, and I was convinced that this is my purpose. God put me on this earth to be Ariella. That's what I'm supposed to do. And, you know,
Yeah.
life has moved on since then. And, you know, like letting, you know what, you watch the process of me having to sort of move on from Ariella into the next thing. But it's such a fair point. Like, a purpose develops. It develops and becomes something more than. But the thing is to start from where you are. But, you know, not be so bound with do you know what I mean? With
Yeah.
one thing. Do you know what I mean? So, that's a fair
And I think also on that as well, not to be too anxious about it.
Yeah.
So for example, like our perfect example is always Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So he was born and didn't come into ministry per se until the age of 30. But if he died at the age of 30, well, that would have been kind of misplaced timing. Do you know what I mean? He did everything that he did in its appropriate time. Then he died at its appropriate time, and then he rose again, right? And that's the important part. But
Hallelujah.
you know, like if he had just been born and then died, then like yes, it was part of his purpose, but like there's more to the story. It's part of the overarching theme, but do you know what I mean? There's more to the story. And I think there's a very important principle actually that he teaches us in the Lord's Prayer, which is give us this day our daily bread, like literally today. And I think that's what's important, like not getting overworked or anxious about who you're going to be in 50 years. We'll get there as long as you're being obedient to God in this moment, about the now.
Sounds familiar, Joe. Where did you hear that? Last Sunday, didn't we?
It always links.
It's so crazy. No, because our pastors were preaching about that last Sunday, about living in today.
Yeah.
Give us today our daily bread, and it applies to purpose as well.
Yeah,
isn't it?
so true. And I think I agree, like Jesus is, he's like literally such a good guide for everything we need. And
Yeah.
similar to you, Nikita, I remember for myself, it wasn't until I got saved that I really became confident in who I was and sort of just trusting in God having a hand and there really being a purpose for my life.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really struck me was when I read about Jesus in the garden before he gets arrested. And he's like pleading and almost like crying with God, like, I'm scared, like I don't want to go through what is about to happen. My purpose done, but your will.
Wow.
And I thought that's so deep because number one, it shows me that it's all right to have doubts and fears and this trepidation about what you think might be ahead for you or what your purpose is.
Yeah.
But we need to always have that mindset of, but your will be done, God. And can you imagine if Jesus had just thought, I'm scared. And literally the thing he's scared about, I'm thinking, oh, I'm scared to speak in public. He was about to get killed.
Thinking about death.
So, and he still said, your will be done. And I
Yeah.
think for all of us, that's such a key sort of thing to just make sure we do keep giving it to God like that.
Yeah. No, but it's real though, because if we think about, you know, different people in the Bible, we're just talking about Joseph. His purpose, could argue, involved going through all of this stuff, or perhaps do you know what I mean? All of these things that he experienced prepared him for where he needed to be. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that bad things happen in your life intentionally all the time. That's not what I'm saying. But it's possible that the challenges we go through can be used to prepare us for where we need to go, for our purpose, our overarching purpose.
Like perspective, like you were saying, how you're going to choose to see the situation regardless.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So it's such a timely word. And going back to sort of 2020, Nikki, I know you. I know that you've been through a lot of challenges leading up to 2020 and even during. Would you like to sort of shed light to that a little?
The challenges or the 2020?
Both. Very good.
Okay. So 2020 2019 for me was what 2020 has been for most people. A nightmare, horrible, disaster, awful. I don't know which other word to give you. Terrible. And so yeah, it was awful. It was I had a period of months. You know when you have like, I don't know when it happens where one thing starts to go wrong, then everything starts to go wrong, and it's just like, what's happening? Within 1 week, I crashed a car. What else happened? I can't remember. I failed a couple of assignments at uni. Like I was like depressed, financial issues. My grandma, who kind of brought me up, was really unwell, eventually died. It was like all at the same time. And I was just like, I don't understand. It was just awful. Awful. But in that period, I learned about the faithfulness of God. It was a scripture I was meditating on this morning. I think it's Psalm 137, I think. But it says something, and I'm still learning it even in this season. It says where God said, David wrote the psalm, and he was saying, even if I make my bed in hell, you're there.
Wow,
and it's
that's a statement.
Yeah, it was that. It was, as Christians, we hit rock bottom, but rock bottom will never be because it will never be without him. Do you know what I mean? Even if we're in hell, he's there. And so that was that season for me. And then after that, life started to get a bit easier. 2020 has been amazing because I've actually got a job in a hospital during peak COVID time. Yes, so whilst everyone was going home, I was going into the battlefield. And it was amazing. It was really amazing. To have that opportunity. It was my first opportunity to kind of work professionally, kind of like during this doctorate that I'm doing. And also, not just that, but it was amazing to, first of all, to go and be in a hospital during the pandemic and actually see like what was going on, but also to be able to help people. So my role was to kind of support the NHS staff psychologically. That was amazing, a real privilege, a real amazing experience. And then I also launched my therapy practice during the pandemic as well, which was amazing. Coincided with different issues that came up, like Black Lives Matter, and just having, it's so weird. There's something about God in times and seasons that it makes you realize. I think for me, it made me realize that God is not he's not poor. He doesn't lack resources. Like, do you know what I mean? So if you're going through a tough time, it's about the lessons, not about the resources at all, because he has them. It's about what you're going to pick up in that season that will equip you for the next. So there was something really amazing that happened. I know I'm rabbiting on, I'm going to stop. No, but when I went to do my first face-to-face sessions with clients in my therapy practice, that he took me past where I had been doing my placement the year before in 2019 when everything was going wrong. The hill that I literally walked up like crying because my car was broken and I missed the train and I was just distraught. And I drove past and I was just like, God, wow, this is you, yeah. He's really amazing. And his faithfulness is just amazing. So yeah, whilst I don't celebrate the hardship that people have been through this year. I celebrate God's faithfulness within the hardship and also his provision within this period. I think that's been absolutely amazing. And I think it also shows us that because you hear people say things like 2020 is cancelled, right? But I think it shows us that God is not cancelled till he says it's cancelled. It's not. I think that I always tell him, like, I'm so grateful that I'm not God, because there's so many things I'll throw in the bin that he actually likes to recycle.
God likes to recycle. I like that.
Yeah.
I like
that. He really does. And so, yeah, I'm thankful that even though many of us have thrown 2020 in the bin, he's never been rocked off the throne. He's still on the throne and he's still got a plan.
Nikki, man, this has been so good.
Definitely. We've got like a couple of questions that would be good just to sort of see your perspective on. So there's one that it seems like very similar from Paula and strangely from myself, but that would be my wife on Facebook. Basically around how do you think faith and mental health can be discussed better within the church? Or do you think it's something that the church just gets right and discusses it well?
So the reason I'm smiling is because I just did a workshop on mental health in the church. Literally finished last weekend talking to church leaders about faith and mental health. How do I think it can be dealt with within the church, or how do I think it can be dealt with better? I think two things. On the world side of things, so in terms of like mental health services, I think they're really, really good at kind of figuring out what the problem is, expounding on the problem and discovering what the issue is, looking at different diagnoses, looking at all the different factors that may have contributed to the problem. Whereas sometimes in the church, we can be a bit short with people. We can be a bit impatient, even sometimes a bit dishonest, praise the Lord, I'm good kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or we can be like, oh, pray about it, a bit dismissive. And so I think that there's learning for us to have on that side of things, in terms of learning how to really sit with and be able to hear what people are going through and be able to understand all the different contributing factors. But on the other side of things, where there's opportunity for true healing is actually where there's God. And so we definitely have that. And so I think that there's that opportunity for a bridging of the gap between the two, for churches to become more involved in mental health, in speaking to their congregations about mental health, in speaking amongst each other about mental health, in becoming more informed, but it doesn't mean we're defeated. And there's one thing that I always say in terms of mental health. We all have mental health, in the sense that mental health is literally the health of your mind. Like physical health is the health of your physical body, right? And so we all have good mental health at times and bad mental health at times. Just like if I had a cold, my physical health would not be great at the moment. Do you know what I mean? And so whether someone has a diagnosis or they don't, it's not the end of the world. Also, not all diagnoses are like kind of for life. For example, when we look at like how we diagnose depression, that's based on the last 2 weeks of your life. That doesn't mean you're going to have it for the rest of your life. Do you know what I mean? And so I think there's a real opportunity for us to kind of address stigma and start to hold mental health with our hands and talk a lot more about it.
And would you say counselling is for people whose mental health is bad, or is it not just that? Is counselling something that you would even recommend for someone who would say, yeah, I think my mental health is pretty good at the moment?
I love these questions. So I believe in and promote. Okay, let me say it this way. There's a difference between fire safety in your house, making sure that, flammables are kind of out of the way, making sure you have smoke detectors and kind of what they call extinguishers, versus putting a fire out when your house is on fire. How much can you really salvage when your house is on fire, right? And so that's not to say that professionals can't help people when they're in a mental health crisis. They definitely can, and I definitely still encourage people to come. But I would say that therapy is that opportunity to catch the house before it starts burning. It's the opportunity to process things that we might have a niggly feeling. It might just be that we want to know ourselves better. We want to work on ourselves. We don't have to firefight all the time. So I would definitely encourage, I think that therapy is a process that everyone should go through at least once in their life. I think that we have a lot of the time as humans, we love to be resilient, and that's good, but we have a mentality of strength. And a lot of the time we think that strength is not admitting or talking about our problems. But why not? And why not address it before it all piles up and then you pop and then, do you know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah.
This is like a hot topic, mental health.
Yeah.
Nikki, we're gonna have to bring you back, girl, to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I've got so many questions.
I know, right? So, but the time is short. But it's been so lovely. I don't know if there's any last questions from anyone. I don't know if you can see on the.
Yeah, let's have a
one last question, Nikki. If there is, I don't think there might be. Is no?
No, although I do have one for you, Nikki, just off my own. What would you say that there's, as believers, anyone that was looking for counselling, should search for just any counselling, or is there such a thing as Christian counsellors out there? And if so, would you recommend that path, or would you say it doesn't particularly matter?
I'd say it depends on what the issue is. So there's lots of different ways of going about things. You can go for a Christian counsellor. You can go for a qualified counsellor who is a Christian. So a Christian counselling service, an example might be something like LL Ministries. I don't know if you've heard of them. ELLEL. They specialize in things like forgiveness and stuff like that. Also some there's something called Sozo. Sozo, I think, means saved, healed, and delivered, or something like that. That's a counselling method, and different places. That's a Christian counselling method, where basically they kind of look into what Holy Spirit is saying and that kind of thing. Or you could go and look for a qualified counsellor who's a Christian. So there's a British Association of Christian Counsellors. If you Google it, they'll come up. There's that. Or you could look out there. I mean, it really depends. If you're dealing with an issue like depression, for example, and you just need some help with the depression, then you can go to the NHS and literally get counselling that way. Unless you feel that you specifically need a Christian counsellor. And I would encourage people to do both as well. So if you are going to services, you are going to the NHS, or you are looking for private therapy, I would also say keep your pastors in the loop, or keep someone in your church, like stay accountable to them, and so that you're getting that balance as well. Sometimes we just like to feel understood holistically. And then there's people like me who I'm a Christian counsellor, although I don't just offer counselling to Christians. Out there. Yeah.
Funny you should say that. Nikki, where can we find you? Can you tell us your name? What do you call it? Your handle. That's it. Your Instagram handle, Facebook handle. Where can we connect with you for those that would like to?
Okay. My Instagram handle, my personal Instagram is @nikita.nq. My therapy Instagram is @therapyish, so therapy and then ISH _UK, and then I have a website, www.therapyish.co.uk. That's where you can find.
Fantastic. Cool. And she also does podcasts, so catch her on Spotify. Well, Nikki, we love you. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank
here.
you.
It's been such a great conversation, and I'm sure there's more to come. Guys, thank you so much for watching Nikki, and I'm sure you're going to send her love. But anyway, we're coming to the end of our meeting session. I really don't want to stop talking, but you know, we've got to move. But yeah, this has been a really good conversation.
I've loved it.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone watching has kind of really loved what Nikita had to say.
I think it's so relevant.
I think it'd be good to get her back.
I think we should. We can have a part 2. But look, guys, as we said, you know, be encouraged. I think the main thing we want people to feel is encouraged. And I was encouraged listening to Nikita. I don't know. You know, I did. I got really encouraged. And I want to sort of close out with one verse, you know, and this is the verse I shared with the team, and you'll see it on our social media platforms. Here is what it is. Romans 8:28. I love it. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. All things work together for good. So whether you've had a tough week, whether you are feeling like the world is on top of you, be encouraged, because God is able to turn your situation around, and he will work it together for good. You can find us on our own social media platforms, guys. Unsubscribed _brightcitychurch.uk. I can't remember. I probably said that wrong. But yeah, guys.
We'll post it in the comments.
We'll post it in the comments. Catch you next week. It's going to be another fire.
We've got a fun one next week.
Yes.
So with that being said, actually, we're after a lot of participation. So if someone watching can put the socials in the comments, and if you're not following already, please do, because we're going to be putting stuff on throughout the week.
Yes.
In the build up to next week.
Yes. Well, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
That's so cheesy. Good night, guys. Bye.
Night.